Hello, this is Keeping It Real, where we learn from the top performing real estate agents. This show's being live streamed on YouTube and Facebook. So if you're watching it live, you can leave comments down below and we will try and answer all of the comments and questions as we go. After the show, after the live stream, this will be available everywhere on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, keepingitreal.com, realgeeks.com/blog, everywhere. This show has been around forever. And there are some serious knowledge bombs available in the archive, especially in the last couple of weeks. We've had Sasha Chapman, Bob McCraney, both excellent episodes. And Abe, who Greg knows really well, was on a couple weeks ago and excellent episode. So be sure to check those out. I'm Chris Whitling, the VP of Marketing at Real Geeks. This episode is titled something like, You've Got a Lead, Now What? It's definitely going to be useful for the newer agents out there, but if you're a grizzled veteran, don't tune out yet. Greg and I are both firm believers of no lead left behind. So we're going to talk through how to maximize every single one of your hard-won leads. So Greg, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
And watchers of this show should know who you are, but if for some reason they're new here, why don't you give us a little intro?
Well, man, thanks for having me back. I tell you what, Keeping It Real has always been a fantastic podcast, a lot of good content, like you said. Yeah, I'm Greg Harrelson. I'm located in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I own some brokerages, as well as being an active real estate agent. So I own real estate companies in Myrtle Beach, Charleston, Columbia, South Carolina, Wilmington, North Carolina. So there's quite a bit of a reach there. But what I think is very important to understand is that I'm not your typical, owner, manager, or broker. I'm not the broker. I'm still a practicing real estate agent. And I've already, if anyone was to just kind of fact check me and you were to have access to my MLS, you'd see that I've already closed over 100 transactions myself this year. Nice. While developing talent, coaching agents, and managing lead flow, et cetera. So I'm a big, like you said, big proponent of no lead left behind, and starting every day, searching for new leads. So it's always like, get more leads and don't leave any of them behind.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to dive right into this, and I'm a big believer in KPIs. We here on my marketing team, we start every day by looking at our core KPIs, and it's the underlying philosophy of, you manage what you measure, what you measure gets managed. And so talk to us about like the kind of traditional KPI of contact versus close versus the KPI that you like of capture to contact.
Yeah. So I think this is extremely significant, and it's one of those conversations that's not talked about enough. So I'm glad we're talking about it, and hopefully this awareness, helps a lot of agents, a lot of listeners. Usually in real estate, and you know what, we better tell everybody KPI, key performance indicator. It's a key performance indicator. Right. It's like some sort of data that we want to measure. And then we continue to look at it to see if we're heading in a positive direction based on what our goals are, right? So the KPI that most people measure when it comes to leads is they always talk about what their ratio is for people that they've contacted to people that they've contracted. Like, so they've talked to this person, and I've talked to 5 people, and I, wrote 1 contract. Then that's a 20% ratio, right? 20% ratio between the amount of people that you talked to and the contracts that you wrote. Or you could look at the contacts to closing ratio. So how many people does it take for you to close? The key is, when you understand what your ratio is, like you talk to this many people and you close this many people. And when you kind of get an idea as an individual agent, what your baseline number is, what your ratio is, and then you say to yourself, gosh, I'd really like to improve that ratio, because that's going to have a direct impact on your return on your investment. So if you improve that ratio, you'll improve your rate of return on that investment. But let's think about what you have to do to improve that ratio. you actually have to really practice the conversation. You have to probably learn different dialogues. Maybe you have to practice different scripts. You have to get better at your presentation. Maybe you have to pre-qualify the buyers better. There's a lot of work that has to be put in to move that KPI. So if I currently talk to 100 people and I make 3 sales, so there's a 3%, that ratio is a 3% return, right? Or ratio there. Well, what's it going to take to talk to the same 100 people and make 6 sales? Well, you're going to have to get 100% better at identifying opportunities, at follow-up. There's a lot of work to move the needle.
There's a big black box in there that's like hard to penetrate.
Yeah, and it could take, and now listen, you can move the needle. It'll just take you a year to level up your skill sets. So what I looked at and what I train the agents and I focus on within my own companies is a different ratio. I like that ratio, and I will know what that ratio is for for an individual agent. But the ratio that you can actually have a faster impact and a bigger impact is the ratio of capture to contact ratio. Your contact to closing ratio is what it is. And it's really hard to move that number. But if we look at what our real capture to contact ratio is, you'll see that it's very, very poor. In other words, somebody will buy 100 leads, online leads, and they'll get an email that says, hey, you got a new lead, or maybe it's a text notification. You got a new lead, call them fast. And then you probably, let's just give the benefit of the doubt, the realtor's doing what they're supposed to do. They get a new lead alert, and they call fast. Well, what ends up happening? It goes to voicemail. And then the agent leaves a voicemail. And then then it's kind of that moment of like, okay, what do I do next? Should I just wait for them to call me back? Well, I left a voicemail. I'll wait for them to call me back. And then 4 or 5 hours goes by. The person doesn't call back. So then you're like, well, should I call them back? Should I not call them back? Most real estate agents don't call them back. Don't call a second time. Majority of them don't call a second time. So then what ends up happening, you paid for 100 leads, but you may have only talked to 18 out of the 100. So when agents are doing their ratios, then they're calculating their ratios based on 18 contacts, how many contracts? Well, I think what you should do is focus on, what if you captured 100 people and you talked to 70 of them?
Yes.
Now, even if your skill set's the same, like you do nothing to improve your skill set, now it's 70 contacts, how many contracts, versus 18 contacts, how many contracts. And in order to actually go from, say, 17 out of 100 talked to 70 out of 100 talked to, all you have to do is, number one, attempt to call them more than once and use automation. Like the Real Geeks, the workflows would be an example. Use automation. So leverage automation as well as exercise manual techniques. So it's a combination of manual and tech combined can get you to a 70% ratio.
Okay. So we are going to spend the rest of the episode talking about how to like really drive this, this KPI up. But I think this is where we need to do some audience participation.
Okay.
If you're listening out there in internet land, we can't see you, but we can see your comments. So calculate your capture to contact ratio. And at the end of the episode, we're going to come back and we're going to discuss with Greg, what are rookie numbers and what are numbers that you should be proud of? And so we'll revisit these, go do your calculations, leave them in the comments. We'll come back here in a second. All right. Yeah. So now that we understand the field that we're playing on, and it's all about, it seems like it's all about getting more conversations, which I love how you teed this up.
Yeah. That's it. That's it. That's it right there. That's it.
Right. How do you practice getting better at something? Well, you do it more. Right. Mm-hmm. So seems to make sense. All right. So let's dive in. Can I say one more thing before you get in? Yeah.
And so we really went through the two different ratios, but if there's one other thing that I want to say this to make sure people stay very tuned into this conversation, and that is when the reason why I focus on the capture to contact ratio, because if I go from 17 to 70, that's more than 100% increase, right? And if I talk to more people, I'm going to close more deals. I'm going to make more money. But the one thing that didn't change is I didn't have to spend more money to talk to more people. So yes. I buy 100 leads, I talk to 70, where my competition's buying 100 leads, talking to 17. So if they want to talk to 70, they got to go buy 300 leads. So now they've got another 200 to 300% increase in expenses. That's why everyone's damn complaining about, oh my God, leads are too expensive. No, they're not. What's expensive is not contacting the leads that you bought.
We got to stretch those marketing dollars. Hey, we already have a great question coming in. So
All
Sally
right.
Lee asks, what is your definition of a contact? Is it speaking to them? Is it them opening an email? I think I know what you're going to say on that. Is it them responding to a text? How do you categorize that?
Yeah, first of all, that and I know that this is said a lot, but that is a really good question because we have to define this. So I'm glad that she brought it up. So my definition of a contact is talking to a decision-making adult. That's my definition of a contact. Now, in the online world, and as busy as we have become, I'm a little bit more lenient in the context of this dialogue of saying that a text can be a contact, but not an email. Now, when you get a text, I ask you not to text back. When you get a text, you actually call them. So if you'll follow that rule, then I'm okay with us actually counting text back.
Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
Truly, what we're trying to do is we're increasing engagement. That's the whole process here. We're engaging with more of the 100 than we were if we didn't use what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. All right, so let's dive into it. Lead comes in. You get the notification from Real Geeks that says you got a new one. Walk us through your order of operations here. What do you do?
Yeah, so the first thing that I'm going to do is lead comes in. So we all know the conversation about speed to lead. So let's assume that we are Johnny on the spot and we are calling that lead immediately. So the first thing we're going to do is call the lead. Okay. And let's make an assumption that they don't answer. Okay. I'm not going to leave a voicemail. I'm going to hang up. I'm going to count 5-10 seconds max. And then I'm going to call the lead again. Mm-hmm. That's called the double dial. Okay. Now, for some people that are sitting here saying, well, why would you do that? Well, if you have a friend, a child, a loved one who calls you, and when you see the number, you're like, oh gosh, I'm busy right now. I'll just call them back. And then all of a sudden, 10 seconds later, they call you again. Then the dialogue in your head changes. It goes like, oh gosh, I'm busy. I'll just call them back in a moment. Now the dialogue in your head is, oh, I wonder what's wrong. I wonder if it's okay. I better take this call. So the chances, if for the people that don't pick up on the first dial, you're going to get a certain percent increase of people that'll pick up on the second dial. So now we're already going from 17 to more than 17 per 100 by doing that. So there's the double dial. Okay.
You're basically indicating that you're not a robo dialer at that point.
Yeah, that's another. I didn't think about that, but I do agree with that. I agree with that perspective. And then the next thing that I do now, I'll say this for those of you that use Real Geeks, because I'm a big Real Geeks user, have been for many, many, many years. So I'm going to speak Real Geeks because that is the CRM that I use. So it's the double dial. Then we're going to immediately activate the workflow. There's a workflow that is free inside of the Real Geeks library called no contact after first attempt. So it's double dial kickoff workflow, no contact after first attempt, which means I made my initial manual attempts, didn't get them. Now I'm going to kick off of a workflow.
I was just looking at that one in the Real Geeks CRM. It's in the library, and you are the author.
Yes, so. That's right. That's right. Yes, because I really I built it for me. I didn't,
and it's available for every Real Geeks user. They can go into the library and, like you said, free. Click add. Yeah.
That's right. That's it. And so now what's going to happen here is when I kick off that workflow, then I've already made the workflow already knows because I built the workflow. It already understands that I've done those two calls. And so the first thing the workflow is going to do is going to send a text. Okay. Then there's going to be a little delay, and I don't know the exact amount of time for the delay, but let's just assume for a moment it's about 2 hours, and it's going to send a text, and then probably 10 minutes later an email. So now what I've done in the first, like, say 5 minutes is call, text, email. Let's just assume now I'm going to have maybe about an hour and a half to 2 hour delay. Text. So call, text, email, text. Start over day 2. Text, email, text. And I've now got a 70% ratio.
There you go.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. It's so simple.
So someone right now is probably typing, but don't you think the person's going to be annoyed? I've heard you answer this question
not as
before.
Annoyed as I am that they actually signed up and won't take my call.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm the one, like, I'm worried about me being annoyed. So here's a but it's a good question, and it's a valid thought. First off, I don't know what that was. That was call, text, email, text, email, text. I think that's what I said. That's somewhere in between 7 and 8 different touches within, say, a 24 to 36 hour period of time. Okay, so number one, most people will never go through that entire sequence. So out of 100 people, I really don't know if I'm accurate in what I'm about to say, but I do trust my gut because I haven't really dissected it to this detail. But out of 100 people, I'm probably going to get, by the time it's call, text, I've probably already got 40 responses at that point. Okay. So, like, there's so many of them that after the first text, they're the ones that's going to get the response. And then after the second text, because the second text, by the way, it's the second text. I'll tell you what it is, or what it needs to look like. And what you need to understand, getting the text is not annoying. It's what you say in the text that determines if it's annoying. Yeah. That's really important. So if you're like, hey, I'd like to help you buy a property. Hey, I'd like to help you buy a property. Hey, have you been pre-qualified? Let me tell you, you're annoying the heck out of them. But if my first text is, hey, I got I saw that you were inquiring about a piece of property in my local market. I'd love to help you. I'm sure you're busy right this second. I tried to give you a call, but let me know when's the best time to reach you is. And if they don't respond to that, then the second text is going to say something like, I'm not sure if you got the last text, so forgive me for texting you again. Mm-hmm. This is Greg Harrelson with blah, blah, blah. And it's something very soft. And then another text is eventually going to be, gosh, I'm not sure if I'm texting the right person. Is this Chris?
So you're trying to draw them into conversation. It seems like you're doing two things. One, you're being very human. And yes, you're drawing them into conversation.
Yes. Yeah. So contrary to what most people believe, like I get more of this than I get stop texting me. I get more of, hey, I'm sorry I wasn't able I'm sorry I haven't been available. I'll try to reach you this evening. I get more of the consumer apologizing that they couldn't talk to me than actually are mad at me. I swear to you, I get more of that because I'm being human. Remember, we're responding to them. We're reacting to their action. This is not spamming. This is not just like randomly going to a old phone book or a list that you're buying from Kohl's directory and spam texting people. These people opted into your website. They raised their hand. They voluntarily gave you their telephone number, right? So you got to put that in perspective. It's not a spam text. And so a lot of them, I think a lot of them appreciate the effort that I'm putting in to serve them. And they're in response, they're sitting here. So, oh, I'm sorry, I did get your message. I'll try to reach you a little bit later. Get that all the time.
Definitely. Okay. This is you can tell when we're having a good episode because we got questions all like flowing in. So one thing that I had thought of while we were talking about this is in the previous conversation we'd had with Abe, he says that he typically does his calling during a certain hours of the day. It sounds like he likes to get up, start his day with the calling. Given the priority on speed to lead, how do you work that into your day? This is a little bit of a tangent, and we're going to come back to our main conversation. But I'm just curious, now that we're getting into the real stuff, how that actually works for you.
Yeah, well, okay. So again, another good question. And so what's important to understand that Abe has a certain way that he wants to have his business run, and he has a certain way that he wants his life to run. Very important. Mm-hmm. So when you hear somebody like Abe say, well, I like to put in my calls, do my calls from 8 to 11. Well, then what he's going to focus on is he's going to focus on making sure that whatever, like if he kicks off a workflow, he's going to make sure that it's kicking off early in the morning. So he's able to respond between 8 and 11. So he's going to time his workflows based on when he's available. Okay, that would be one thing. But the whole mission for Abe, now when we're talking to Abe, we're talking to somebody who does 150, 170 transactions a year. When you're doing 150, 170 transactions a year, you're like a doctor, and you can actually determine what your hours of operation are.
Right.
So he's gotten to the point where he's got a business that he's designed a business around his personal desires. Right. And so when you do that, you got to make sure when you're doing things like workflows, you're kicking them off at a time that you know you're going to be available to respond. So that's going to be critical. Now, let's just assume that he's got leads coming in at 2:00, and that's not during his time. What he's doing from 8 to 11, he's being very intentional about being there. But that didn't mean that if he gets a call at 3, that he's not going to respond. He's just going to get the biggest bulk of his contacts are going to be during that time. Lots of lead follow-up, lots of things like that. For somebody else is not at maybe at a level that they want to be yet, it's a little bit harder to do that. You in the beginning, you've got to work on speed to lead and be available. Or what I like to tell agents is, if you're not going to be available this afternoon to take leads, then make sure you find somebody that can be available for you.
Definitely. Design the system that can do it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did have a question come in. Chuck Chance asked, so if the lead comes in between, 9:30 p.m. to 7:30 a.m., you just handle it the next day, which.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just scroll through the messages.
And let me, I'm going to read into that question a little bit more because, it's one of those things that, obviously, yes. I mean, I'm in bed at 8:30, so I would never see a lead at 9:00. But the question kind of alludes to, do we always need to be on call? Do we always need to be available? No. Just remember, people who generate don't have to tolerate. So if you're feeling that you have to do something at 9, it's because you failed to do something earlier in the day. So if I miss a lead because I'm not available at 8:00, it doesn't even faze me, because I actually captured and contacted so many more leads that a normal real estate agent would have missed. So I'm net not missing anything.
Yes. It's interesting. It's like there's a theme of that conversation that I talk about with other executives. And I basically will say, are you running your schedule, or is your schedule running you?
That's right.
Right.
100%.
Yeah. All right. So here's a question from Sally Lee on YouTube. So I got a response to a text message that says, can I call you this evening? But then they never call. What do you do?
Well, you don't wait for them to call you. You call them.
There you go. Excellent.
Yeah. But Sally, what a fantastic response you got, right? So that tells me that they sincerely are wanting to talk to you. So if they don't call you in the evening, when they said that they would, we got to be careful that we don't default to, oh my gosh, they're not serious. Let's default to, oh my gosh, they have a new child and they can't the baby's not like going to sleep and they're having to rock the baby. Like, let's not default to they're rejecting us, they're hiding from us. Let's actually default to like they have a life. And it's not like this is a schedule to get on a train, a bus, or a plane. And so like a lot of times they have other priorities that they have to tend to. And so we should default to those thoughts instead of like most agents defaulting to something's wrong. And then because when we default to something's wrong, then it's awkward. Well, should I call them? Should I not? And then once we say, should I call them? Should I not? Should I? Then the next thing we say is, well, they're probably not really that serious because they would have called me. And then the next thing we say is these leads suck.
I mean, yeah, I like that you're drawing this one out because I mean, I can tell you from like both working with a lot of real estate agents as well as like being on the, person doing the real estate transaction myself, like I got a day job. I got things to do. I'm doing my own producing. Right. And that has priority over my life. And so if I didn't call you back, it's probably not because I'm not interested. It's probably because I have a lot going on. Right. And so I actually appreciate the follow up. It's not that, not that I'm not interested in doing the transaction.
Yeah.
So what do you think of autoresponders? Like Real Geeks has Geek AI. There's a couple other options out there on the market as far as like, speed to lead and qualifying conversations. Have you played with those at all?
Yeah. So I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it. I'm anti-autoresponder. All right. Okay. But let me tell you why though.
Yeah.
Okay. So as a technology, I love autoresponders. I mean, autoresponders and workflows are fairly similar in nature when it comes to the tech, right? The challenge with autoresponders, as I see is real estate agents hide behind them. What makes an autoresponder ineffective is an agent will hide behind the technology and it lets them off the hook from doing the work. And now there's plenty of people that would sit there and argue with me on that. And you'll have no chance in an argument with me on that. You got to understand, like I get 3,000 online leads a month. Okay. I kind of know a little bit about leads. And what I know is when agents have an autoresponder on, they make less attempts manually to call people. And then the autoresponder a lot of times doesn't seem real. So then if you got an unreal communication trying to pretend like you're real, and then guess what you get? You get kind of like unnatural communication back. And then your mind looks at that communication. It's like, oh, they're not serious. And there's never an attempt to have a human conversation. If we used autoresponders correctly, like for instance, I'm going on an appointment. I'm going to be off the grid for 2 hours. Let me activate the autoresponder. I'm out of my appointment. Let me disable the autoresponder. If we had the maturity and the discipline to do that, it's fabulous. But what people do is once they put that autoresponder on, it's almost like they never take it off.
I think you just gave us a bunch of ideas that the Real Geeks product team can start building in. You need it's almost like if it could be tied into the focus statuses on I'm going to get myself in trouble like pitching products here.
Now every one of the audiences will be like, yeah, we need that. We need that.
Yeah, we want that one.
Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the workflow, like the did not contact workflow for the people that are not Real Geeks users or just haven't like messed around in there. Can you give us an idea what's in that workflow?
Yeah, well, first of all, what is a workflow? Like workflow is a Real Geeks language. So I think a more universal language would be drip campaign, right? I think everyone kind of knows what a drip campaign is. So when we say workflow, think drip campaign, it's all the same thing, right? And so as I described a moment ago, the workflow for at least for this conversation that we've been talking about is nothing more than, hey, I got an alert that you were inquiring about something about real estate in our local market. I'd love to help you. Assume you're busy at the moment. I tried to give you a call, but please let me know when the best time I can reach you. It's very simple like that. And it's just going to be a series of, like, say, 7 different communication points like that between email and text. And that's pretty much, that's it. I mean, let me tell you what the workflow is not. I think I think this would be helpful. What the workflow is not, it's not some well thought out presentation thinking that fish are just going to jump in our boat as soon as they get that text. It's nothing brilliant.
Right.
As a matter of fact, the more brilliant you try to be in a workflow, the less effective it's going to be. You need to leave that to the one-on-one conversations that you have. So I look at a workflow as not being a lead generating tool. I look at workflows being a lead identification tool. It helps me identify who I should spend my time with right now.
I love that. And I was thinking about this conversation, and this was one of the thoughts. Like, I get asked a question a lot, which is like, what's the difference between sales and marketing? And my stock response to that is, well, marketing talks to lots of people and sales talks to one person, typically. Right.
Yeah.
And, the best marketers will sit, and read copy, like our luminary works by like David Ogilvy and people like that, and think about like how to create the best copy. And then on our best days, 30% of the people will respond to our messages. And, maybe we sent out 100,000. And so that's a big number. But that's a lot that didn't, and so in these sort of supporting sales organizations type roles, our big job is to get people to re-engage with the people that can have those personal conversations. So I love what you just said there, because it absolutely rings true with all of my experience, which is, we're not trying to land that, bullseye message that makes the person get out their, contract signing pen. It's the pull them back into the conversation and get them rolling again.
100% agree with everything you just said.
Okay. So Bill Evans asks, is there a long-term, this person's ghosted me workflow? I wonder if this is a joke or
no, it's not. Well, I actually think it's a great question, and I'm like, yeah, we do have that. I just didn't title the workflow that, but I like the title. Like, this son of a gun has been ghosting me workflow. That's what I feel like I need to have one of those. I'm probably going to create one of those just for fun.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think his name is Bill. So Bill, what we do have is we have a workflow, and it's basically a re-engagement workflow. It's for people. Now, let me say this, Bill. Now, you really gave me some insight of your mindset by using the word ghost. What that means is, these people are doing this to me, or these people are like negative. That's kind of like, that's what's going on. So I don't think that they're ghosting you. I think that somebody else has their attention. So it's like some other agent is probably been a little bit more effective at using a workflow or calling them. And so they're actually texting back and forth with somebody that's another agent in your market. And so, yes, they may not be calling you and ghosting you, but it doesn't mean that they're not a quality lead. So there's three ways that agents label leads that are very common that I believe should not be allowed. And that is the term dead. We should never label a lead dead, because there are no such thing as dead leads. There are leads that's dead to you, but they're alive on somebody else's website. There are leads that we label as non-responsive. No, they're non-responsive to you, but they're responding to your competitor because they actually beat you on speed to lead. There's inactive leads. They're not searching on your Real Geeks website. Well, these leads are all inactive. No, they're inactive to you on your website, but they're actively searching on someone else's. So then it's like, okay, these people are quality, but I haven't got their attention. So then, yes, I have a workflow for re-engagement, and that re-engagement workflow would be with the sole intention of getting them re-engaged with me and pull them away so that my competitor calls them dead, inactive, or unresponsive because they're alive, active, and responding to me on my website.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so we got a couple of questions that perfectly line up the next phase of this conversation. So Connie's asking if the client seems hesitant about the next steps, like so it sounds like she's got them on the call. Now what? And Shelly asked, I struggle with what to say next, like when the conversation starts. So you get a hello. What are you doing? Like, how's this? Is it qualification that starts next? Like, how are you thinking about?
No.
Okay.
No. Not qualification. Well,
yep.
Well, Chris, what I say no because I mean no. Okay, we got to be thinking about what is the buyer calling for, not what house or condo. Why is the buyer calling? The buyer has every bit of information they need about property because it's all on the internet. You can find out what the seller paid for it. You can find out the taxes, the square footage. You got all the pictures. Everything's already on the internet. So why the heck is a buyer actually calling us anyways? They already have all the information. Well, they're calling for the one thing that they don't have, and that's access. So the buyer's calling for access. So if we know the buyer is only calling us for access to the property, then what we should be focusing on is our first part of the conversation should be about granting them access to the property. Oh, hey, Chris. Yeah, thanks for calling. It looks like you're looking at the property over there on XYZ Street. Are you interested in setting up a time to take a look at that? That should be the first thing you say, because that's why they were calling. Most of the people are calling to see if they can gain access. So then the first thing that you're saying is you're offering them access. Now, I already know if somebody has not commented already, they're thinking it. Well, Greg, you mean I should go out and talk to all these and show properties to all these unqualified people? No, I didn't say that. I just said the first thing you should talk about is giving them access. Set the appointment. Okay, would you like to look at it today at 2 or 3? Well, 3 would be good. Okay, great. I'm going to have to call to confirm that we can get it in at that time. But let's just go ahead and pencil that into our schedules. Now I've set an appointment. Now I haven't hung up yet. Now that I've set an appointment, now I'll start. Well, I'm just kind of curious. You're going to be paying cash, or you need to talk to a lender about getting financing. So instead of leading with qualifying, you end with qualifying. Now let's just assume for a minute they said, well, I can't get a loan and I don't have cash, but I'd still love to see it. Then cancel the appointment. So you could set an appointment, qualify, and cancel appointment all on the same first call. Or you can set an appointment, qualify, and go on the appointment all on the same call. So that's how the structure of the call should look like. Now, there's a lot of rapport building and other questions that you're going to ask. I'm just kind of giving a template, and there's a lot of other things that you would fill in between.
Definitely. So one of the things that you talked about in a recent Inman article was like the dreaming phase, the exploratory phase, the buying phase. Like, as this conversation goes, like where do you start to weave these things in, like these little pieces that you're trying to learn from them? And like, where does that rate in terms of things you want to know versus like, how are you going to pay for this? Right.
Yeah. Good. Good. So like you said, they're calling for access. So I'm going to grant them access early on, set the appointment, right? And it's just like, okay, I've given them what they really wanted out of this call. So the law of reciprocity is going to kick in now, because I actually gave them exactly what they wanted. Now I've earned the right to ask them some questions. Oh, I'm just kind of curious. I know you're wanting to look at that property. How did you happen to pick that area? Oh, well, I don't know. We've actually never really been to Myrtle Beach, but I just kind of saw that on the website and I thought it was pretty cool. And oh, okay, good. So when are you coming down to Myrtle Beach? Well, we're coming down in 2 weeks around the 4th of July. or coming down in a week or whatever. And then I keep asking them questions, and then I might find out it's like, they're kind of still 2 years out trying to decide, is it going to be Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, Charleston, Savannah, or keep on going up and down the coast. Okay. So what that tells me is they're probably in the dreaming phase. So it's, once I've given them what they want, now I'm going to start asking questions. And then as I'm asking questions, then I'm going to try to figure out, are they in the dreaming phase? Are they in the exploratory phase? Or are they in the buying phase? Now, here's something that I said when I was talking to the person on the Inman, I don't think it really made it to the article, as it'd be probably hard to write. And that is, for all of you who actually got an online lead in the last year, and they actually bought with you in the first week or two, I just want you to know you got lucky. Because you just happened to get a call that happened to be in the buying phase. Now, here's why you got lucky. They were in the buying phase. Before they were in the buying phase, they were in the exploratory phase. And before they were in the exploratory phase, they were in the dreaming phase. So believe me, they were talking to other real estate agents in each one of those other phases.
You're that other agent you were just talking about.
That's right. So that dreaming phase, that agent said, you know what? They're not worth my time. They ignored them. Mm-hmm. And then they got to the exploratory phase, and they called some more agents, and those agents ignored them because they weren't in the buying phase. And then they're in the buying phase, so they have to call new agents again. And all of a sudden they get an agent. Yeah, I'll show you. Okay, we're ready to write a contract. And the agent thinks they're really good. Like, man, I converted that one fast. No, you didn't. You got lucked out. You lucked out that the other agents ignored them in the other phases. So the lesson to learn is every buyer that buys goes through these three phases. So these leads that we're capturing that you feel like, gosh, they're kind of a ways out, don't abandon them. They're going to buy. Unfortunately, real estate agents are grading leads based on how quickly they convert. That's not the way to grade them. Time should not be the determination of quality. Desire and willingness should be the determination of quality. So if you actually capture a lot of leads and you keep nurturing them through automation and you don't ignore them, then they will eventually fall to the bottom of the funnel and you'll close a lot more deals.
Yes.
And by the way, you won't have to buy as many leads.
There you go. Okay. So this is a perfect question. Pravina, I believe. Sorry if I mispronounced that. How long is generally too long to continue to work with a lead? If they talk.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, if they continue to talk to you, but keep having a reason not to buy.
I don't know that you ever stop talking to a lead.
What's the oldest lead you've closed?
Oh God, who knows? I mean, I really wouldn't know, but it'd probably be over. I mean, this morning I went to, I had to go out and meet with somebody. I took a listing today, and I asked the person, I said, hey, quick, I'm not sure if I have your email address. Can I get your email address when I was, leaving the property? Mm-hmm. And he goes, oh no, you got it. You've been emailing me, stuff for the last 5 or 6 years. And that's why I called you. I didn't even know they were in my database.
Yeah.
So yeah. I can assure you that's not the oldest lead that I've converted, but that's just this morning.
I think of those old leads as momentum, right?
Man, let me tell you, that's the old leads is like accounts receivable. It's like it's
right.
Future revenue. It's future revenue.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. I actually
back to the call. Back to the question though, because it is a legit question. Like, you do have to kind of manage your time. So if somebody's just going to keep like they just almost like are just asking you questions because they can get you, and they're like, and the longer it goes and the more time that they take of mine, Like, in other words, they won't just let me nurture them. They're always wanting to talk to me and burn up my time. The more time somebody's going to request of me, then the tougher my questions are going to be of them. So I'm going to, if I see that, I'm going to start saying, hey, look, I know we've been talking for like 2 years now, and I'm just kind of curious. I mean, realistically, what is it going to take for you to actually make a move? And I don't want to disrespect them, or I don't want to be rude, but I will be a little bit more confronting about the conversation and about the situation, I should say. And a lot of times that'll solve that problem. And so sometimes they'll reveal to me something that I didn't know, and then I can help them overcome it. And sometimes they'll reveal things that I didn't know, and I'll never be able to help them overcome it. And then at that point, that might be when I discontinue. So I want to be careful at saying, when it's like this, abandon them, because I do not believe in abandon anybody. But I do get the question. It's a legit scenario.
Right. I think perhaps maybe phrasing it another way, it's like we perhaps see agents that are too quick to disregard leads versus okay, there's legitimate problems with this situation. So
and as is being in the Real Geeks team, too few agents are actually utilizing technology to nurture.
Yeah.
And so because they're not doing that is why they're getting those annoying buyers. Those buyers are annoying them because they're having to do everything manually. So, in just real estate CRMs across the country, no matter who you may use, the CRMs are always underutilized. And if we use them more, we have these problems less.
John Head is saying,
oh, I know John Head. Hey, John Head.
Well, so he's bragging. He's saying that his longest client timeline was 14 years.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I believe it. John Head's a great guy.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm scanning back through the questions here because we're getting close to the end. And one of the questions was a person who's reacting to you saying that you get 3,000 leads a month. And I'm going to rephrase the question a little bit, but like, what's the composition of those, like paid versus SEO, and how are you? OMG, Greg, that's a lot of leads. How are you getting all those leads?
Yeah, probably 20, probably, let's just say 30% of them are paid, something around that. Maybe 33% of them are paid. And I have quite a bit of Real Geeks websites. So, and I was a very early adopter of SEO. I own domains like myrtlebeachrealestate.com, and I've owned it for like years and years and years and years and years. And there's many other old domains. And so when I got involved with Real Geeks, one of the reasons that I got involved with Real Geeks early on is because I had a web person. I had an ex-SEO friend that says, you need to get a Real Geeks website because it's the easiest one to get ranked. That's what she said to me years ago. And I'd be darned if she wasn't right. And we built thousands of pages on long tail, terms, keywords. And so we get a lot of organic free leads because of that. Lots of them.
I love to hear that. And for people listening, the episode with Bob McCraney is absolutely a must listen if you're interested in this topic, because Bob goes into some really tactical details of how exactly he does, Greg, what I've also heard you talk about. So, but sometimes
SEO is not dead. SEO is not dead. Maybe the terms that we were going for, 5 years ago are too many people are going for them, so we have to switch it up. But the SEO in general is not dead.
Definitely. Okay, so as we start to round this up, we started the conversation with contact
Capture to contact ratio.
Capture to contact. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. You know why? The reason why we both have to think about it, because it's not talked about enough in our industry.
Right. Yeah.
So it doesn't just roll off the tongue. We have to get it right. That's a bad sign. Everybody, we need to talk about this more. This is like the solution to your cash flow problem.
Yes. Okay. So if you're talking to, someone on your team or someone you're working with, maybe a coaching client, and you're thinking about like underachieving, okay, overachieving, where would you want to see that KPI?
And we're going to talk about the capture to contact ratio numbers, right? Is that what you're referring to?
Yep.
So I believe that if everybody goes and checks what their current number is, and they're honest, okay. One thing about, data is like sometimes we say, oh, I got a 10%, conversion rate on for contact to contract ratio. And it's like, yeah, but you're leaving some people out of the numbers because like there's very few people that have that type of ratio. So there's something that's left out that's calculating it to be that. Most people are probably going to be between 16 and 18. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty dang good. That's assuming that you're actually really trying to reach the people. So if I say most people are going to probably be like 8%, like 8 out of 100. Because they'll get a lead and they'll never even make the first attempt to call the lead. So you got a lot of that, but let's just kind of like try to like not let that skew the number too low. I think most people, if they do it right, or if they're doing what they believe they should do right now, they're probably between 16 and 18%. So I think that's poor compared to potential. Okay. But I think it's good compared to like the average real estate agent in America, because we know that they do less than one deal per year. So 16 to 18, I think is poor compared to potential. So I don't want to offend anybody because I'm comparing it to potential. I think 60 to 70 takes a lot of work. If you're really committed. Now you can see with the amount of leads that I'm getting, it's very important because like the difference in say 17% and 65% for me with 3,000 leads is humongous, right? Oh, yeah. So I'm gonna put in the effort because the return, the upside is there. So, but it takes effort. And in my case, it actually takes people to manage that and make sure that they police that correctly. So that would be an extremely high number, but is potential and can be done by anybody on here. It's just whether or not it's sustainable based on your schedule and the manpower that you have, the bandwidth that you have. So I would think that everybody should accept the challenge to be at a minimum of 30% and try to really go for that 50% number. That right there would still be a 3x of what you're currently doing, which means a 300% increase. And if you actually start contacting 300% more people that you've already bought the leads for, contact 300% more. If everything else stays the same with your skill level, you're probably going to have a 300% increase in revenue.
I think we got to end like right there. Oh, call it.
Drop the mic. Drop
it. Greg, where can everyone find you?
I tell you that, if you just go to I got a Facebook page, Real Estate Sales Solutions. Yep. Go out there and hit me up, DM me. And if you have any questions, I love the conversation. I am very responsive on Facebook. So feel free to ask me a question if you can, or if you choose to, and I'd love to help.
Definitely. And there's a few questions that we didn't get to. So definitely Facebook is probably the best place. And, we're happy to answer that. If you're in the Real Geeks ecosystem, the mastermind group's a great place to talk about these as well.
Yeah. So for the fellow Real Geekers, you know exactly where. Just our closed mastermind group is fantastic for the members of Real Geeks.
Excellent. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for listening. Feel free to hit up realgeeks.com/blog, keepingitreal.com, where you can find all the show notes. We're going to put together a digital download of a lot of these bits of wisdom that you can click and download and, put on your wall. So while you're there, you can put your email address in and subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you're an Apple Podcast user, definitely hit subscribe there. We would love a review. 5-star review really helps us out. And last thing is we'll be taking a break in August so our crew can have a much needed vacation, and we'll be back. So awesome, thanks again, Greg, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great.